r/AskReddit people with weird, obscure jobs. What is your job and how did you get the job? I work in QC, quality control, for media. In one company they occasionally paid me to watch Pronoun to make sure it was in sync and in good quality for video-on-demand distribution. In another company I spent years watching movies before release in secure theater-like rooms, to make sure the files are ready for distribution, subtitles and audio in sync, no picture corruptions, stuff like that. I always got to watch the biggest movies of the year in a giant screen weeks before they were released, sometimes months. I got the job by going to film school. I work in a clinical lab where I get to play with baby sweat for a bit of my day. We are testing for chloride level. Increased chloride in sweat is one of the diagnostic markers for cystic fibrosis. I am a clinical laboratory scientist. Not all clinical labs perform this test, but I am lucky enough to work at a lab where we do a couple interesting low-volume tests. You know when you're watching a sports program and you see the little pop graphic in the corner, a baseball player's stats, or an advertisement for Easy Mac, or stay tuned for Saved by the Bell at 9? Yeah. That was me. I updated those graphics and uploaded them to Fox Sports. Since Fox Sports is a 24-hour channel, there's always one guy in the office 24 hours a day. I spent a year on a team reclassifying the Duke University library system from Dewey Decimal to Library of Congress. Had to learn like 4 different alphabets just to label them properly. Edit, holy mother. Didn't think anyone would care, but I can explain a couple of things. Duke University has one of the largest research libraries in the world with millions of books. In addition to the main library, we went through engineering, biology, art and divinity. There was also another main library on East Campus. The whole operation took about 2 years, I think. I was there from December 2006 to February 2008 when the project ended. The Dewey Decimal System works perfectly well for small American libraries that cater to an English-speaking, Judeo-Christian populace. The Library of Congress system is more egalitarian and perhaps more importantly, has unassigned sections for disciplines that have not yet been discovered. Large university libraries and other world-class collections are better served by the lock system. I don't quite remember the number of people on our team, but it was about 15 of us doing the physical labor. We were a company that did contract work for libraries. We mostly labeled books, scanned barcodes and reshelved. The reason I learned those alphabets was because we had to meet production and the barcode sheets only used the Latin alphabet. Most of the time the barcodes on the book and the labels matched, but sometimes they didn't or were missing altogether, and then you'd have to waste precious time figuring out what was going on. I'd scope ahead when we were about to hit a section in another writing system to make sure I was prepared. I was a puppeteer for many years and I actually got that job from an ad in the classifieds. It cracks me up that there is a scene in Being John Malkovich where he tries to find puppeteer in the classifieds and fails. I can't believe it. I remember that movie because at the time I was trying to become a cartoonist or animator and there was no way I was finding anything like that in the classifieds. You actually succeeded. I used to be the assistant to the feline ambassador for an art museum. I was an assistant to a cat puppet. They had so many terrible puppeteers, because they were hiring acting students from a local college. They wanted to be the show. No. The puppet is the show, you're just there to carry them around. The puppeteer should be almost invisible. Official court stenographer. I type everything everyone says in court. I was told about it in high school and thought it sounded cool, so I went for it. Took 5.5 years in college, but I'm nationally certified to type 260 WPM and regularly push above 300 WPM in court. This has always seemed like a really interesting career choice to me. What is the strangest or funniest statement you have ever had to transcribe? I'd about funny, but I work for a young, early 40s, female judge that looks younger than she is, and I once had an 80-plus-year-old call her sweetie on the record. I just turned to my judge and made big shocked eyes and could tell she was holding back a laugh, but she had to tell him off for calling her that as it's disrespectful. My dad told me of this one time he went to my mom's work Christmas party. She was a banker. As the bankers talked shop and tried to sound impressive, the spouses grew bored and talked among themselves. The guy who drew the biggest crowd was this man who worked at a toilet factory and he did quality control. His job was to flush toilet paper and simulated poop down the toilet. The people at the party, especially the men, were riveted by his descriptions and peppered him with questions while all these upper management bankers looked on with irritation. I work as an air traffic controller. Not weird, but not many of us around. I pretty much fell into it after passing an aptitude and it's just been swell since. Albeit, the classic phrase from strangers, "Isn't that the job with the most suicides?" It might be, but I don't know anyone. It's actually super chill and rewarding when you get it right. We always try get it right, but when you get it super right you're dead pleased. I mix fire retardant for fighting wildfires. A lot of people know that airplanes drop retardant on fires but don't think about the millions of dollars of infrastructure that is behind that operation. Everyone who works at my base started by working at the local ski resort. It's a good way to earn enough money in the summer to coast all winter, so we keep the jobs among fellow ski bums. Mine isn't necessarily weird, but how I fell into it was. Around 10 years ago I was working in the IT industry. I decided to help my dad out one weekend sell hunting gear at a military expo, basically antique military gear and army disposal. One of the sellers had a vampire killing kit. Knowing very little about antiques at the time, I pulled out each piece, checking them over. The story checked out, did some research on my phone throughout the day and found out that it could be a fake in two ways. It could be a kit put together by someone out of antique pieces to make it seem real. And technically, even if it was authentic, it was a Victorian fake. With the fear of vampires in the late 19th century, con men put together vampire killing kits and sold them to rich businessmen visiting Europe. What stood out to me though was the main reason I bought it. In the middle of the kit was a crucifix with an ivory inlay, that doubled as a goddamn percussion pistol. Long story short, I took a chance, spent $1,000 on it and got persecuted by my father for such a dumb move. I didn't have much in my savings at the same. I took it to Ripley's, believe it or not, in Australia, and they flew someone out from the US to look at it, which was pretty exciting. Within 5 minutes of looking at it they offered me a ridiculous sum of money for what I thought was a large investment to begin with. While in ways I do regret selling the kit, it allowed me to start a career in the antiques trade. 5 years later I moved to the UK to study a degree, and now I specialize in rare obscure antiques that have allowed me to travel all around the world sourcing new weird objects. P.S. Don't worry, I gave my dad a cut of the vampire kit profits for believing in me. I used to be a hand model. Apparently I have really good looking hands. Although they look completely normal to me. People were always asking me how I got into it, so it was fun to bullcrap people I was discovered on the street. Now I moisturize 15 times a day and sleep with my hands in plastic bags. The money was great, but I'd have to spend long days on set being careful not to wreck my manicure. Which they paid for, of course. Also paid for the time it took to get the manicure. Mostly did TV commercials. Now I tell people at parties I'm a retired international hand model but gave up show business for the much more worthwhile and rewarding career of teaching kids to read. I'm a Chiron operator. I trigger motion graphics on live TV. I was an art student and also was in stage crew in high school. These things got me jobs backstage in theater, which got me a job in TV doing normal stuff like cameraman and stuff like that. Since I was an art major I asked if I could do graphics and they let me on the weekends, and my specialty eventually turned to the Chiron, which ingests the graphics that artists make and plays them back through the switcher that controls the news broadcast. It's not technically an art position, but at my job specifically I could make the graphics in After Effects and Photoshop during the day, if I have a computer free, and in the afternoon I play the Chiron. Usually you are one or the other, because Chiron operators don't need art skills, it's just another tech job like audio operator or camera operator or stage manager or whatever. These kinds of jobs are getting rarer because they are being automated. But since I'm also an artist, I get to keep my job because if someone leaves I can take their job. My parents are escape artists and escape consultants. It's quite a niche in the magic world. My dad started as a magician doing birthday parties as a teen, then got really into escapes, then became the #1 guy designing and consulting on escapes for famous top magicians. I'll answer for a friend of mine, former college roommate. He works for a company which makes coin and paper money sorting and counting machines. They pay him to stay home and be on call. He's a happy guy. I don't know how he got the job, but he's extremely mechanically inclined and pretty inventive. Though calculus tripped him up and he failed college, when he was in high school, he mounted a model rocket like a hood ornament on his car, controlled by a button on the dash. Push the button and it fires the rocket. I'm an assistant curator in numismatics. Basically I manage our museum's collection of ancient coins. It's a small museum, which explains why I even have this job as I'm not a professional numismatist, but we have a pretty sizable collection of mostly Roman coins. But we also have Greek, Hellenistic, Byzantine, medieval European, Chinese, Islamic, and Crusader Kingdom coins. I catalog coins, appraise them, do any research that is required and help incorporate coins into our exhibits. I also do educational outreach, so I hold workshops for our volunteers and the public. I work with professors in the history and archaeology departments of the university we're attached to in order to help them incorporate numismatics into their curricula. Edit: forgot to add how I got this job. Basically I came to university and decided to volunteer with the museum because I like history. I did tech support for the first year and then the director asked me if I would like to train in numismatics. I said sure. 5 years later here I am managing the collection. Full-time in the summer and part-time during the academic year. Not weird but pretty rare. I'm a professional winemaker. How I got it: I have a university degree in winemaking, viticulture and enology from University of California Davis, worked many harvests, now I run my own winery. It's my dream job and I made it happen. I make whiskey. Not super weird but I'd say on the rarer side of jobs. And it took a crapload of time, luck, skill and perseverance to get where I am. I analyze satellite imagery for the government, but not quite in the way you may think. Instead of foreign target assessment, I look at U.S. crops. When a farmer has a loss and files an insurance claim that is subsidized by the U.S. government, we need to ensure the claim is legitimate, and that tax dollars are not being wasted. We also do damage assessment after catastrophic weather events. We use weather data, multispectral satellite imagery, aerial imagery, production data, site visits and so on. If there is enough evidence, we build a case then hand it off to the Office of the Inspector General and U.S. Attorney's Office. It is different from day to day. I get to learn about a lot of different crops and get out and about, see where our food comes from and meet a lot of good producers. I recently started working in a carrot factory. I stand at a conveyor belt as carrots roll past me and pick out all of the moldy ones. How did I end up in this job, you ask? I decided to do an arts degree and now have no career prospects. In all seriousness though, I work with a lot of migrant workers who work extremely hard doing a job they are accused of coming to this country and stealing. They are lovely people who take a lot of care while dealing with the food products, and they deserve all the respect in the world for continuing to work hard during the pandemic. I very nearly had the same job in a pineapple factory. I passed the interview and physical tests, then they noticed I had kitchen experience and put me in the cafe instead. Then they learned I can't use an industrial coffee machine to save my life, so I got bumped over to the outlet store. I still met a lot of the process workers, many of whom were from the Philippines or Indonesia, and were lovely women. Very practical, too. Thank you for watching till the end. Remember to like and subscribe for regular content like this on Monday, Wednesday and Friday at noon. Feel free to post comments or suggestions below.